Alright then, lads, ladies, and those of us who know better. My name is Jackson MTT Kenny, and welcome back to Bold and Bright. Before I get into this, I just want to say, the reaction to this animatic has been way above my wildest dreams. I'm not even kidding. I did this in my shed. I'm not a professional. I dropped out of art school after a month. So, the fact that over 1,000 people have seen it, I was genuinely expecting 10. And I was expecting all of those 10 to be people I already knew who I had to badger into watching it. So, wow. 1.3 thousand people is more than I can imagine, really. I don't have a great sense of scale, but that's definitely more than a few double-decker buses. But while I could sit here and gush all day, this is the behind-the-scenes video, so I might as well get on to that now. If Editing Jackson has done his job right, you should be able to see on your screen now pictures of my work desk. Excuse the ink splatters everywhere. I'm a naturally messy artist, and I've been using this space for 4 or 5 years now, so it's messy. A fun fact about me is that I operate on the principle that as long as you know the beginning and the end, if you write the beginning and the end, you can figure out what happens in the middle as you go. Would I recommend that for everyone? No, but it's the only way I get stuff done, because otherwise I end up in a puddle of, what the flip do I even do? How do I get from point A to point B and then from B to Z? So you can see in the very early days that, let me see, I've got this up beside me. This was back in April. So like spring, we're nearly in autumn now. Whew, passage of time. But you can see that I had the basic idea of Mabel's Fault going wacky, very vague vibes, and that's literally it. The original tone was going to be a lot darker, it was going to focus more on Mabel's guilt, but then I decided, wouldn't it be actually more interesting if she had moved on? I mean, it's been 10 years. Not that trauma has any kind of time limit on when you're meant to be over it, but Mabel's a tough cookie and she's got a support network, so I think that aside from the lingering trace of guilt that we've got going on, she's mostly worked through it, and now she's angry. Which is a very relatable feeling for us people who had to go through some stuff when we were wee. Because your perspective goes from feeling super duper guilty and ashamed that the whole mess happened to you in the first place and blaming you for all of it, and then blaming yourself for all of it. And then one day you maybe talk it out with someone and go, wait, hang on, I was a kid! Kids do stupid things, but kids still deserve safe environments. I did stupid things? Fair. Adults doing bad things to kids? Not fair. So, yes, I took a goddamn children's cartoon and used it to explain some childhood trauma plus anger plus working through some stuff plus I don't even know. As is always the case, I start off to make something fun, and it turns into more of a reflection of me than anything else. But anywho, back to the actual plot of this. This was not a linear process by any means, so to fill you in on how I organized all this, because I did the Good Omens animatic with barely any organization whatsoever, and it was such a pain in the arse, I swear. So this time round, I thought, okay, I'm going to have these labeled, I'm going to have them in sections, and then I'm going to put those sections into even more sections. So there's a shelf directly in front of my desk. I had 4 cardboard boxes. And one box was blank paper already cut to the right size, because of course I use custom paper size, even though that was so annoying to cut out nearly over 70 times. But anyway, so one for blank paper, one for ones that had been loosely sketched on, another one for ones that had been properly sketched on or lined, and another one for stuff that had already been painted or toned. If you want more in-depth on how my creative process works and how I go from blank piece of paper to a full painting, go watch the behind the scenes for the Good Omens one, because that has the lengthy explanation. But of course, this was sized up a lot more. The Good Omens animatic wound up being 20 odd frames, which is fine because A, I had less time to do it, and B, it was my first one. So it was kind of trial by fire, learning to do backgrounds and trying to keep characters on model, and it still makes me cringe to look back on it because artists can't even have a few months between projects without wanting to stick our head in a pillow and scream. But let's just say Meet Me in the Woods was a good couple steps above the Good Omens one, not least because I went from 20-something to nearly 70. And that's not counting the scrapped frames, which should hopefully be coming up on screen now. where you can see that a lot of compositions didn't work, or poses didn't turn out, or faces went wonky, and I just scrapped them. A very useful skill to have when you're an artist is learning how to fix things, because you can't help making the mistakes in the first place. It's the... Look, I've been drawing since I was very, 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 very young, and seriously studying since I was very, very, very young. So I have picked up a lot of things. My most recent one has just been covering up everything with acrylic and gouache and trying to keep everything the same texture. If I look through it, I can still see a million mistakes where things didn't turn out quite the way I wanted them to, but nothing I can really do about that. I did my best. And for all the things for this that I did have references for, there were still a lot of things that I had to just make up, like the big semi-transparent pyramid thing. I didn't know, I thought it would be a cool action set piece. And then I had to work out the logistics of it, and even then, a lot of the continuity for this is wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey, but I'm going to excuse that with the regular parts are pretty good. And then by the time Bill shows up and things start getting a wee bit wonky because of the sheer amount of thinking in relation to space I had to do, look, at that point the Chaos Demons showed up, physics goes out the window. But this isn't like a digital animatic where the whole thing's just there. You can press play or pause as many times as you need to rewatch the thing over and over to see what the pacing's like or where you're at. I could not do that with this. So I had to just lay out all my frames on my desk, or at least in sections, because, again, nearly 70 frames do not fit on one desk. And then I had to take the pictures of them, and then when I took pictures of everything, I would sit down, put the music on, zoom in to individual frames, and just keep swiping along until I had the vague sense what the animatic was going to be like. And it's hard trying to get an idea of the finished picture when you've got like 30 frames and half of them are in pencil, because you can't guess the fine details from that. Something that did make it easier, and that I will absolutely be doing from now on that I did not do for the Good Omens animatic, was on the back of every frame, I always put the date, but I also had, like, maybe a wee note if the pencil sketch wasn't easy to understand in the first place, or because I was procrastinating on doing the finished sketch, so I just had, like, a stick figure and a note on the back telling me what this frame was marked for. Because I'm very good at procrastinating for 5 months. You'll actually notice that if you keep an eye on the continuity of these frames. Just try to notice which ones get scrapped and which ones stayed as stick figures and gesture drawings for the better part of nearly the entire project. I am looking at you, Mystery Shack. But as well as the note and the date, I also had a little, like, scribble of highlighter which told me which part of the story this was going to be in. In the end, I divided the story up into quarters. It's not an exact science, but it was basically Mabel's solo journey, Dipper's arrival, the fight with Bill, and then the epilogue. Which made it so much easier to categorize, because then I could when I need to photograph things, and especially when I had to officially go out and photograph the finished product, I just had 4 stacks of paper that I could pretty easily work with. And on the very last day of creating this, I sat down and numbered everything, which was so annoying. I'm incredibly dyscalculic, which is math dyslexia. Sitting down and trying to organize things by number, not easy. And even trying to organize things with these, I'm not even sure what you'd call them, just desktop slideshows. That was also not easy. Frames got mixed around a lot, or things had to get wiggled. The amount of times I just had to look back on what the most recent slideshow was just to go, where the flip does the diner go in this mess? And now that I think I've covered enough technical aspects to completely bamboozle anyone who doesn't know jack shite about art or editing, let's move on to some fun story stuff. So I covered the character design and how I aged them up and all that in a couple episodes back for my Aging Up the Mystery Twins episode, so I can skim over that. There's a lot of Easter eggs or little artistic clues. Like, brains are very good at subconsciously picking up something, even if we wouldn't be able to explain exactly why we feel something is a certain way. So for the one frame we get of Piedmont, California, everything is very natural colors. The sun is yellow, the shadows are black, the grass is green, the stone's grey. And that is not typically how I operate, because in art, color is relative. You don't actually have to put every blade of grass down as green and every sky is blue. But for California, it's bog standard, and that begins to change almost as soon as we get to Gravity Falls. Because there, I almost always tint the sky orange for those cozy summer feels. The trees get a lot more turquoise. And even in the very early scenes of Mabel's Fault, like the shadows are purple. Trees are leaning more towards blue. It's very subtly shifting from very natural to slightly more fantastical. And then getting up to the twins' room and the contrast between the twins' 2 rooms in Gravity Falls. You know, the setting sun makes the entire room magenta. And the opposite of magenta is yellow. So that's what color the other room is shaded as to show that contrast. And also because Dipper's a nerd at heart, I think he's always wanted a leather-bound journal even before he found the original set. And by the time we get to what I had in my notes as the little weird Mageddon that couldn't. Now that I'm done with it, I'm not too sure about the eclipse as a plot point. I was kind of trying to show that, like, Bill was waiting for some cosmic event to launch his one attempt to get back. This is the only chance Bill gets. The statue's wrecked. Next eclipse, not for a while. Bill's gone. The twins are fine now. But for the purposes and for the story I was trying to work with, I guess an eclipse works. In hindsight, I really should have guessed that the moon covering the sun makes things darker, not oranger. But you know what? It's fine. I was 5 months younger then. So much has happened since. We got a dog. Oh, excuse my theatrics for a minute. I had some real fun painting the skies for this because, as well as being able to make them crazy colors, I could do all kinds of crazy patterns, and in this context, it works. All that lovely bright pink and orange together, yes. Can you tell one of my favorite colors is orange? Completely underrated. It's such a cool thing to put in literally everything. And, looking back at color relativity again, and complementary and contrasting colors, the opposite of orange is blue. Okay. Look, every color wheel and system is a little bit different. Do not come at me telling me it's actually technically indigo or cyan. I'm working off of my system here. But when you see the contrast between going from, like, dark oranges and reds to very, very light blue for the Bill Goes Kaboom bits, right back to dark blue, it sets up a very clear story. It lets you know exactly when something finishes, ends, whatever, and when the next thing starts. Another note I have is that a lot of stories like to end on the sun rising or spring, something that shows regeneration, but I did a little bit of maths and realized that with the timeline I had set of Dipper arriving that evening, that by the time it was done it would probably be night. But also, I kind of like the symbolism of it ending at night more than I did before, because as it is, nearly everything's set in the evening. So it's like they're almost done with Bill. They've done 90% of the hard work. They've learned their lesson. They're not so quick to trust him. Now he's here and they're just done. The frames with the mystery twins on the black backgrounds, those were literally just labeled M or D is done. They haven't got the patience for this anymore. It's just stab, whack it with the book, done. And the symbolism of the sun going down, they're done. Dipper's already writing the journal entry about it, but this is them sorted. They can just hug and go to bed now, it's fine. And I'll also bring up the book in case because I wasn't sure how well I communicated that. The storyteller's biggest worry that unless you spell something out directly, maybe they won't get it, but I'm going to. So obviously Dipper was mad for the first 3 journals that he got to read, and then I didn't actually know this because I watched Lost Legends after I planned out the plot for this, but he is actually gifted his own journal in Lost Legends, the spin-off graphic novel for Gravity Falls. And so the one that he has now is labeled 7 because counting the first 3 plus 4 of his own, because I wanted to show that Dipper is properly researching. He's good at his job. He's found out little details. He never stopped really being a sleuth, but if you go to the page with the journal on it, look, really busy frames are some of my favorite to do. Like the See You Next Summer poster on the wall has so many Easter eggs and fun little clues on it, but I digress. Onto the journal. Like, it says, property of Dipper Pines, Mabel illustrated, and then slightly loopier handwriting saying, yes, I did. And also an old remnant of the destroyed journal because I thought it was cute. And since the idea that Dipper's learned enough to have 4 journals by now, I thought in the original show, the plan A for getting rid of Bill before they just gave up and set him on fire was to use the We Fancy Zodiac thing and to sploosh him back into whatever realm he's from. They didn't get to do that, but that seems like such a nice, efficient way to get rid of your demon problem. Just enough symbols somewhere and you're fine. So just checking out that frame there, the Bill Be Gone Zodiac. But yeah, it's just... Look, I'm not much of a graphic designer, and I really did not fancy recreating the Zodiac word for word. So, it's cyan for Dipper, the keys to keep him in, the pink for Mabel, and then, see those little red splodges to represent the people from the original Zodiac? Totally jam. Totally jam. But I promised a few episodes ago that I'd let you know where some of the Easter eggs are. There are 2 or 3 hidden bills. If you haven't already, I would really recommend just going through this thing and reading any sign you see in the background and stuff like that, because a large part of the fun of Gravity Falls is how many little secret hidden clues you can find in things. But I already mentioned in an episode that 2 of Mabel's posters just say random singer and boy band, but if you look at Dipper's desk in his room, there's a note that says Owl Worm, which is a reference to the Owl House, and 2 doodles of Greg and Wirt and the Beast from Over the Garden Wall, as well as a binder on the floor of that room, and also on Mabel's wee collage you can see Happy 3 years on Tea Dipper, because in my mind there is no way that dude is not trans. So yep, keep an eye out for hidden bills, little Easter eggs, the fact that Pacifica works in a diner, so she's the one handling catering for their party. As for the plot, I had to try to think of a way. I got a wee bit through making it and then realized, oh, I don't actually have a reason why everyone in Gravity Falls would be in one place at the right time. So they took a look at the timeline, realized it was probably August. You know what? They're at their birthday party. Pacifica does catering, Wendy's doing nothing, and it became a really fun chance to see characters that I had to cut after the first draft because there just wasn't time in the 4 minutes I had. We've got the grappling hook and the journal and the mystery shack, because when I made this, I was making it for me. The attention's great, but all the nerdy details and the care and the hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours that went into this. That was because I love this show and I want there to be nerdy details. Right down to the second to last frame if we're counting my wee end screen, where it's kind of hard to see but it's so dark, but there's a shooting star and a pine tree and it's all coming full circle now, isn't it? And since I think that's everything, my voice is starting to go, it's nearly 10 p.m. I think I should really move on to the outro. So, you can find me on Tumblr, I'm at Blue Bold and Bright. I put a lot of the behind the scenes stuff as I went. On the animatics front, I have got hopefully 2 of them coming out in the next 6 months. Although, as you can imagine, one of them will be a mini animatic because I cannot do 8 minutes of traditional animation in 6 months. Nope, I refuse. I'm learning my limits. My therapist would be proud. But also keep an eye on this wee channel as we're getting into the spooky season, because look, in my mind, spooky season is from late summer to early winter. I refuse to have it be just 1 week in October. The spooks are starting now. You've had your summer animatic. Bring on the fricking pumpkins. This podcast releases a new episode every other Friday, except in October because the schedule is going to be a mess for then because of spooks, but you get the idea. And since I think that's everything, my name is Jackson MTT Kenny, and this has been Bold and Bright.